Okay, this is going to be the down and dirty how-to on replacing the old controller box with a new controller box. This lift was brought in for servicing. It actually was cleaned and had a new lead screw put in. So while it's here, it's also getting a new controller box in it so the customer can use the new Canon cameras. Before we start, you're going to want to have a set of hex wrenches, a Phillips screwdriver if in fact your controller box has Phillips screws on the back, side cutters, and some zip ties, which will probably come with your controller. I have not done this. I have not opened this. I'm not sure what I'm going to find. So this is like how you would run into things. So I'm going to get my cables out of the way. I've mounted it on a plywood base plate in my workshop here just so that I can get things done without scratching up a customer's powder coated base plate. The very first thing you want to do is make sure that the power and the communication to the computer are disconnected from the control box. The first thing you want to do is disconnect the power. The second thing you want to do is disconnect the serial port cable going to the computer. In that order, you don't want this cable connected when you're, you don't want rather this cable disconnected when you're plugging and unplugging the power. That can mess up the electronics inside. Now I'm going to remove my lower limit switch and my upper limit switch. Now the limit switches, the serial cable and the power are the same on both controllers. There's no difference. So now I'm going to remove the back of this controller box. It has 4 Phillips screws. Once inside the controller box, you'll see down here on the bottom, there are 2 832 set screws. You're going to want to take the appropriate wrench. Okay, it is a 9/64 inch. Now, I'm going to very carefully slide my controller box out until the slack in the cable, and you can see here, if you like to move the camera around, you can see here on the back where the motor cable connects to the motor. So here's where the cable joins the motor. I'm going to remove these 2 screws. This is a 3/32 inch hex wrench. Now as I'm doing this, I'm seeing that my little standoffs that are actually screwed to the motor are turning. So I'm using there we go. I'm using a pair of bent nose pliers to actually secure those standoffs so they don't come off the motor. Sometimes they bite in, and the screws holding the cable on there actually get into those standoffs, and they cause the standoff to want to come out when you unscrew it. So just be mindful, take your time with it. It'll pop out, then the cable comes out, and that's it. The box is off. All right, the 2 boxes, the old box, old controller box looks like this. It's got an auxiliary port, and basically there's nothing plugged into it. The new controller boxes, whether it's one of these that's been retrofitted or not, will have a live port, on this one that says camera, and then a shutter indicator, a green LED. Now this LED lights up the moment the shutter is actually activated for the camera, so it's a visual indicator letting you know that the controller is in fact firing the camera. Other than that, it's the same. Inside, the electronics are a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the old one. We'll put it off to the side. I've taken the cover off of the new one, exposing the inside. I'm going to do everything I did, only in reverse. I'm going to connect this cable to the motor. I'll take one of the tiny screws, the 440 cap screws, and I'm going to screw it into the standoff. There's one. This is not going to get any kind of movement or stress. This is just a safeguard. Okay, so that's now locked in. Earthquake couldn't move that. So there we go. Now the next thing to do is just carefully feed the wire back out of the way so it's not binding. And you move the box over until these holes underneath are exposed, the threaded holes. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've replaced these two 832 bolts. The box is now mounted solid to the base plate. I'm going to go ahead and screw the back on. Ultimately, you're going to want to put your limit switches back on. This is your upper limit switch. This is your lower limit switch. And now I'm going to put in the camera cable. Now what I've done is I've taken this cable, I've routed it up through the top of the lift and down the cable harness, just to kind of keep it tucked in out of the way. I'll put it into my camera spot. And make sure when you put these cables in, you make sure that the cables are seated firmly. And the last thing you want to do is connect the serial pin cable to the port which says computer, and then the power to the power side. Let me go do that, and then we'll show you what that looks like all put together. Okay, now the controller box is completely assembled. The back is on. All the cables are in position. There's upper limit, lower limit switch. This is the camera, this is the power, and this is the 9-pin serial to the computer. Once again, I'd like to mention, before you put power, make sure that this is connected to the controller box and the other end is connected to the computer. Never put power to this box without this COM port being connected. That's it. Now you're ready to go, so that anytime, this will operate any camera with a shutter cable. If you're going to use a Nikon, you switch it over to a Nikon cable, or a Panasonic cable, or a Sony cable. Right now for the Canon cameras, it comes with the Canon cable. It's a real simple setup. That's it, and go online and look at the videos on how to use the new CamLift software that operates without the live view built in. That's it.